Hey there folks, my name's Alistair Gray. Welcome to our next session. We've talked about what's going on in the subject. Last week we've talked about different terminologies and definitions, and now let's start talking about local area and what's going on globally with the phenomenon of natural medicine. So, what we're going to be covering in this session is giving you a feel of the diversity of what's out there, an orientation to the spectacular diversity of what's out there, the breadth of what's offered, and perhaps why. We're going to keep it as local as we can as well, talk about the Australian context, talk about your local context. What's different, and most of all, how did we get here? Now, you remember in our first introductory session, I mentioned that that's in fact the overall question of our subject, but we're going to focus in on that one in this particular session today. So, natural. Remember our definitions: integrated, integrative, natural, traditional, complementary, all of these different terminologies that we talked about previously. Natural medicine in this context has that that flavour, that impression of something from nature. Yeah. In other words, that there will be something in the natural world which will be effective in whatever symptoms or conditions that we might have. Traditional, meaning slightly different definition, isn't it? Traditional medicine meaning coming from some articulated tradition, might have been handed down from master to pupil, from master to apprentice, over years, centuries, over a long period of time, yep, down the line. And we know that if you're glancing around the world, that natural and traditional medicine, complementary medicine, has incredible diversity in the way it's applied in different places. Now, where have you travelled? What are the countries? Have you seen that app? I love that app. What countries have I been to? I think it's called Bean, actually. There's a little piece of advertising there. But if you actually plug in the countries that you've travelled around the world, it spits out not only a map of the places you've been to, but I like it that what it says is, this is the percentage of this continent or the world that I've been in. What about you? Where have you been? Where have you travelled? What are those countries? Why don't you just make a couple of notes as we go through. What countries have you seen? And, in this context, what experience of complementary or natural or traditional medicine have you experienced in those places? Any. What about the spas that you might have been to? Or the resorts that you might have been to? The beaches that you've been to? Or what about the treatments you've had around the world? You'll realise there's an outrageously diverse breadth of natural medicine delivered around the world. From shamans in Tibet, in China, in Guatemala, Belize, Mexico that you can see here, all sorts of other delivery. Natural medicine in stores can be from as diverse as Neil's Yard Remedies in Covent Garden to this image you've got in front of you. In a completely different environment. From healthcare centres that might look like this to Mossman in Sydney, or Harley Street in London, and Broadway in New York, or Brooklyn in New York. It is different. So have you considered, why is it the way that it is? How is natural medicine in Bristol in England evolved and developed, as opposed to the way that it's manifesting in Glebe Point Road in Sydney in Australia? Is it just about rent? Is it just about what can people afford? Is it responding to the local market? What is it that's driven individuals and a profession to manifest the way that it does? These are the questions. You must have sat back and thought about, well, I've heard that they use Chinese medicine in hospitals in China? Well, they do, clearly. One of the great stories that I heard recently was the lead clinician from the Royal London Integrative Medicine Hospital, Dr. Peter Fisher, who's the rheumatologist for the Queen, also a homeopath, talk about his introduction into Chinese medicine. It's an interview which I did with him, which is on YouTube. You can hunt it down. And he said, well, I graduated from Cambridge and I found myself in China, and suddenly there was, we walked into a surgery, and there was a woman with her stomach opened, conducting some bowel surgery, and she had a couple of needles in her ear, completely lucid. And he says, they didn't teach us that at Cambridge. And it's a great story. But this is the reality of it. Chinese medicine is used at the front line of surgeries, at the front line of all sorts of different conditions in that environment. And yet in other places, say the US or say Australia, it's used in a much more limited way. It's the same with homeopathic medicine in India. A while back I was lecturing at the Bombay National Hospital, and there's the homeopathic wards, and I was giving a series of lectures to an audience with 4 other physicians and practitioners of homeopathy on the application and the different methods that are used around the world in homeopathy. Why is it, you must have thought, that in America naturopaths can call themselves doctors, but in Australia they can't? Unless, of course, they're medical doctors. There's a reason for it. It's about the training, about the level of training, the accreditations, the amount of hours they do. But you understand that naturopathy, in that context, is a different beast from the naturopathy in South Africa, in New Zealand, or in Australia. Why is it? How did that happen? Why is it that this gentleman here, Dr. Elio Rossi, runs a homeopathy research program from his hospital in Lucca in Tuscany in Italy, and yet homeopathy is on the fringes of natural medicine in other parts of the world, say Australia, when it's mainstream, almost mainstream, in many other parts of the world? Why is it that this building here in Malaysia, Cyberjaya University College of the Medical Sciences, this is a space-age building, and you walk in, it's marble floors, it's got these vaults, it's quite an extraordinary building, it changes colour, and that's where they teach Islamic, homeopathic and traditional Malaysian medicine in just outside of KL, in Putrajaya. You see, regulations for natural medicine are so diverse across the world, it's almost too much to grasp, actually. Sometimes homeopathy is delivered in one country in a completely different way in another country. It's regulated by a different government department in Australia to the situation in Indonesia. Yeah, but I'm trying to get you to get a feel for the incredible diversity, but also the threads of similarity that run through all of these places. And so, photos from my travels. One of my favourite photos on the right-hand side there. It's a French pharmacy. Every pharmacy in Paris or France, as you probably know, sells homeopathy. It's in the front window. There it is. Homeopathy and allopathy as well. Other medicine. Homeopathy and other medicine sold in the pharmacy. I love this photo because it's on Avenue d'Enfant Rochereau, but just at the big circle there. And I love it that the condom machine is on the outside with a beer bottle on top. I think that's kind of a postmodern juxtaposition, don't you think? What about on the left here? We've got, this is Melbourne, I think, and we've got, why is it that in Melbourne, for example, in this centre, we've got naturopathy, which is unheard of in France, herbal medicine, nutrition, osteopathy, myotherapy, but where's the homeopathy? It's not there. Where's the Chinese medicine? It's not there. So it's interesting that there are clearly local preferences and needs. And again, the purpose of our talk today is to get you to have a feel for the breadth of that. Let's keep going. Here we go. This is advertised as natural teeth cleaning in London. Love that photo. I don't know about you. This was at the Health and Beauty Expo at Olympia a little while back. What about on the right hand side here? We've got all of the different homeopathic products in a pharmacy in, I think it's Pharmaca, the health food store in Colorado. What about the different resorts that we have around the world delivering natural medicine? Some incredibly expensive. Chivasom in Thailand. I did some lectures there once. That was a good gig. I think the cheapest weekly package at that place is 20,000 American. Yeah, wow, sumptuous. You'd have to come away from there feeling healthier, as opposed to the Sri Lankan organic approach to the spa industry. Local differences in the delivery of it. This was a college that I went to school in the late 80s and the early 90s. That was the classroom at in the Greenfields of Devon. Bit different to Endeavour College these days, isn't it? Here's another French pharmacy selling homeopathy and everything else. Again, you couldn't imagine an Australian pharmacy advertising or delivering natural and traditional medicine in that way. What have we got here? Oh, I think we've got a little shot of Covent Garden, I believe. Yeah, there's a pharmacy, homeopathic pharmacy on the in the side streets just off Covent Garden there. What else have we got? Let's see if the sound works.
There we go.
It's a bit chilly. Warwickshire countryside. Start date 2012. Thought I'd have a chat. You know, when you study natural medicine, one of the things that happens is you got options. You can practice, you can research, and one of the things that's happened worldwide is that complementary medicine practitioners, massage practitioners, homeopaths, naturopaths, nutritional therapists, they get involved in the spa industry. Here we are in the middle of England. Interesting one, this. I've forgotten the name, but I'll tell you what, it was magnificent. A hideaway? I suppose you call it a breakaway. And what a great way to spend 24 hours. So what happens? It's all very culturally appropriate. Once I had the good fortune to give some lectures at a spa in Thailand. Slightly different vibe, but I remember giving some lectures on homeopathy to the residents there, and also some of the staff, some of the nurses. It was interesting. The food, I remember, was lots of garlic and amazing vegetarian food and endless piles of really, really amazing salad. Here, and in England, there was roast sausages, a lot of meat. It was amazing. There was some pretty thick local accents around, and they were scoffing down really healthy things like bits of pork that were becoming the plate. But look, it was all very healthy and good, and yeah, I recommend natural medicine for a whole bunch of the above reasons.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you if the point came across there, but local differences described as complementary or natural, yeah, and what's a healthy nutritional program at a spa in England is significantly different from one in Thailand. I was in the street in London a little while ago, and I saw this shop across the road from a cafe that I was in, and let's just hit this button and see if it works. It's called the Back Rub, and you just go in there for your quick massage, in and out in 15 minutes.
Well, I know, I was just noticing that.
Interesting way of delivering natural medicine. So you get the point. There's an incredible breadth of what is offered. Herbal medicine and markets and pharmacies all around the world. For the top end, for the middle end, for the bottom end as well. Cheap and cheerful or incredibly expensive. And in Australia, where for the most part, most of us are today listening, what about in your local area? You see, would you know that the brief history of different complementary medicines in your local area? So where are you? Are you in the east or the west or the north or the south? Did you know, for example, that in the very early days of West Australia, homeopathy was bought by the monks in that community just above Perth? Actually, some of the first settlers, white settlers in West Australia, bought homeopathy in the very early days. Same in South Australia, came from the German migrants in the 1820s, I believe. What about in your local area? When did naturopathy arrive? See if you can find out. When did Chinese medicine start to manifest itself in Melbourne town? Yeah. Now, in Australia, because of distance, and these days distance doesn't mean the same thing because of the different technologies that we have to communicate with each other, but the origins of natural and traditional medicine were very important. In the US, when the white settlers arrived from Europe in the 15, 16, 1700s, they absolutely relied on their survival, Thanksgiving, on medicinal knowledge and local knowledge of indigenous North American native Indians. In Australia, a different story. Not a lot of pollination, cross-pollination of knowledge when it came to bush medicine. That's a recent revival, without a doubt. But European natural medicines arrived quite quickly with the waves of migration in the 1800s in Australia. So what about Australia? Now, we don't have great recent and up-to-date numbers about the total number of folks working in complementary medicine in Australia, but it's estimated in 2009 to be around 13,000. Now, what does that mean, though? Does that mean people working in health food stores? Does that mean people working for companies like, say, Blackmores or Metagenics? Is that individual health practitioners like myself? It's estimated that the number of naturopaths and Western herbal medicine practitioners, this is in the Ben Susan review from 2004 and also spoken about in the Arona documentations in 2011, was estimated at 3,000. I think that's probably at the low end. And again, what does that mean? Do you see we're an industry and a profession that's almost in its infancy, because we can't really be sure about the numbers involved and exactly what are they doing. You see, am I a naturopath if I'm seeing 25 clients a week? Am I still a naturopath if I'm seeing 3 clients a week? You know, what is the definition of being in the workforce? So this just gives you hopefully an orientation towards your local area and what's going on locally. Historically, there is so much more biomedical content coming into our trainings. I think you're all aware of that, or you soon will be, because you're about to hit your medical science classes. And you'll start to see that complementary medicine practitioners around Australia are integrated in various ways into, if you like, what is becoming a conventional setting. Some have government regulation, like Chinese medicine, and that says Victoria on the slide, but of course recently in the last month or two nationally as well for Chinese medicine. And of course there's ongoing discussions in relationship to naturopathy and the other complementary medicines as well. So its legal status is changing as we speak, its levels of education are changing as we speak, and it's got a strong and a long tradition. The first naturopath, if you like, came from one of came from Britain, set up in 1923 in Brisbane, and in 34 they have first health food store in Brisbane. But of course, Australian naturopathy developed and morphed and took its form because of its isolation from the rest of the world. Australian naturopathy evolved in its own way throughout the hippie 70s, 60s and 70s, with its interesting mix of roots in tune out, drop out, hippie attitudes, but also its links to European and North American naturopathic traditions. Now, if you're involved in the naturopathic degree, you'll learn more and more and more about this, and we've got other sessions coming up on the philosophical roots and the underpinnings of naturopathy. But that just gives you a feel for the unique way in which naturopathy has evolved in Australia. And of course, the massage, the musculoskeletal professions, the Western herbal medicine professions, the Chinese medicine professions, and homeopathy have their own individual development as well. Now, of course, if you just take a figure and say 50 years or 80 years ago, of course, virtually every known drug was directly derived from its understanding, its herbal medicine understanding. Some examples here: quinine, digitalis, aspirin, Valium, all have its roots in herbal medicine, and various ways have been found in the pharmaceutical world to reduce down the specific ingredients and manufacture that what we now would consider to be allopathic or conventional drugs. But remember, everything on the planet in terms of food 80 to 100 years ago was organic. Everything was organic. And up until 50 years ago, virtually every drug was also related in some way to its herbal origin. So today, we've got a situation with naturopathy and now with herbal medicine with these incredible deep traditions. When it comes to herbs, the UK has an incredibly strong herbal tradition, also rooted in Druidism as well. In Australia, there's a very strong and robust profession. New Zealand and the USA have strong traditions as well. Within Europe, it's mainly in Germany, not so much in France. And then one of the things that you'll notice as you go through your course here at Endeavour College is the acknowledgement and the integration of incredible amounts of Ayurvedic and Chinese herbal medicine knowledge into our knowledge banks. But as it says at the bottom here, this is nothing new. Western herbalism has always borrowed from other cultures. And as I said before, that's just not in our time. That's also in previous centuries. And as people move from one place to another place, as populations migrate, say from Europe to the east coast of America in the 15, 16, 1700s, our knowledge about herbal medicine just grows and expands. So what's what? So what are the different traditions and specifics we're talking about? We've mentioned naturopathy, a very, very specific body of knowledge. These days, and in this context, an umbrella term that we often use to include disciplines such as Western herbal medicine, and sometimes homeopathy, and definitely nutritional medicine. At this college, we tend to separate them out. You can study naturopathy and those electives underneath as well. But naturopathy and homeopathic medicine are considered to be separate whole healing systems as well. Then there's Ayurveda and its traditions from India. There's traditional Chinese medicine, obviously, from China, and at this college we focus just on one aspect of that, and that's acupuncture. Yeah, but of course acupuncture is just one part of the whole healing system of traditional Chinese medicine. The range of musculoskeletal therapy disciplines, including remedial, Swedish massage, etc., etc. And then various other disciplines, are often diagnostic tools or symptom relieving disciplines as well, using something from nature: kinesiology, aromatherapy, reflexology, and that kind of thing as well. These are all different disciplines. When it comes to how they've developed over time, let's just now, to round out our discussion of what's happening locally and globally, just talk about the major bullet points along the way. How did we get here to this point with this incredible diversity? First, a long time ago, at least 1500 BC, Druids were incorporating astrology and theology, their knowledge of the stars and God, into the delivery of their medicine. And of course, the delivery of their medicine was mainly herbal medicine. We know that the Greeks were doing a similar thing based on Egyptian medicine, and 1,000 years ago, that was the known world, really, wasn't it? The Mediterranean. So the origins of Greek medicine. Why that's important is because so much of what we do now in medicine, conventional medicine and natural medicine, is based on the Greeks. Hippocrates advocated the healing power of nature, and of course it's Hippocrates that's talked about in conventional medicine, the Hippocratic Oath. But of course it's often forgotten that Hippocrates was the person that said, yeah, but there's two ways to create change. And that's one, to use opposites to create change. And there's also another way, and that's to give similars to create change as well. It's often mentioned that Hippocrates is the founder of homeopathic medicine. The Greeks began to use their different approaches, especially with the concept of the pneuma, and that is an early way of describing the energy that runs through the bodies, manipulating the different energies that run through the bodies. But you can see that we're not talking about last week or 100 years ago, but more than 1,000 years ago, and 1,000 years before BC. Just before BC, 400, Democritus described the fundamental building blocks of nature as atoms. Now, it's interesting. He didn't mean atoms as we know them, but it's interesting that he described it in that way. Theophrastus talked about medicinal plants and their use. Galen, you will have heard of, physician to gladiators. It's interesting how often it's surgeons in wartime that make big developments, knowledge leaps. He studied cadavers and developed a system of medicine that dominated Europe for 1,500 years, Galenic medicine, just 30 years after the death of Christ. I suppose the next important bullet point is in the 3rd century. Dioscorides wrote De Materia Medica, and the plant properties of up to 500 plants were written for the first time. What else? In the UK, Alfred of England recognised the importance for the public to have medical knowledge, and herbal texts were translated from the Latin for the first time. Nothing much else going on in the intervening time. We'll hear some more lectures on what went on in the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages. But it really wasn't until around the 1100s that any medical schools were starting to develop, and they developed in Italy. And that's very important. If we're taking a sweep through human history, then medical knowledge was based in Italy, and big developments occurred in Italy during the 1100s through till around the 1600s. The big leaps that we made in our knowledge of anatomy and physiology were because of our links, of the medical links with artists, especially in the 14 and 1500s in Italy. So it was only because we got better at art that we started to learn more and more about how the human body developed as well. But it's interesting because one of the consequences of that was that rather than looking at the flow of energy through, in and around the body as the means by which we got ill and the means by which we got healthy again as a consequence of good treatment, is it because we started to map the human body, we started to think differently. I'm saying we, as in humans. And it's around this time that we start to hear of the human body as being a machine, not being an energetic body. That was the first time it had ever been considered in human history. And so in the 15th and 16th centuries, changes, big changes, mainly philosophical changes, as all of the artistic endeavours, philosophical endeavours, started to interpret the body as being an elaborate machine, and if you understood the parts of the machine, then you would understand how to fix the machine. This is the origins of medicine, conventional medicine. Now, natural medicine, the traditions kept on going as they were. What do you mean the body's a machine? Of course it's not a machine. The body is a consequence of the movement of vital force through, in and around it. They say in the natural medicine traditions. So this was the difference and the change in the vitalistic streams and the mechanistic streams. The beginnings of medicine went off in one direction, while the traditions of complementary medicine and the vitalistic traditions continued, but the split started then. Yeah? Before then, there was no difference between medicine and natural medicine. It was all done together, essentially. But the big split happened in this time, 15, 16, 1700s. Surgery becomes better. Yeah? There was a legalization and the recognition legally in some places, like in the UK, in Britain, when it came to herbal medicine. Yeah, we sometimes talk about the masculinization of medicine as healing. The emphasis on healing was reduced. The emphasis on the medicine woman in the village, as cities grew, and as doctors and universities started to take over, and surgery developed its particular emphasis. In the vitalistic traditions, as I mentioned before, the major bullet points from the 19th century, the development of homeopathy in the early 1800s, eclecticism by Beach, osteopathy developed in the very end of the 1800s by Still, and the origins of naturopathy with Lust and Kellogg and Lindler and Tilden, especially in the USA as well, based on the traditions of nature cure. More of that coming up later as we go through some of our sessions. And then to the 20th century, and you know about the major developments in medicine. Germ theory took over. Yeah, drugs, the development of antibiotics, the development of technologies to look deep into the human being and see bugs, and the belief that microbes caused disease. Interesting. Orthodox medicine took off, yep, to what it is today. But it's interesting that in the 60s, the beginnings of chaos theory, the true understanding of physics and quantum mechanics especially, started to create a revival in the interest in natural medicine. And in the 70s and now in the 90s, we've got the situation where natural medicine is just booming worldwide, especially in those countries just mentioned in the Western world, where orthodox and conventional medicine is at its sharpest. Why is it that there's so much interest in natural medicine in the US, France, Japan, Australia, and the rest of the Western world? Yeah? Because it's obviously not doing the job for such a large proportion of the population. So natural medicine began this revival in the 60s and 70s, and then in the 90s with some good advocates, with a mind-body connection development began really in earnest. Deepak Chopra, all of that stuff. And here we are today in the 20th century, where quite possibly we're in the middle of a paradigm shift, the mechanistic worldview that's lasted for 400 years, essentially. That the mind is the mind and the body is the body. The body is a machine. This is crumbling before our eyes, and we can see that there's a much more sophisticated, holistic approach to health, whole healing systems like the human body. And this change is we're a part of this change. You're a part of this change. The mere fact that you've made it to the college and that you're listening to this means that you're a part of the next phase in the development of this worldview. With the discovery of electricities and magnetism, the problems with Newtonian mechanics, Newton's theories of cause and effect, we see that maybe the future of medicine is much more going to be in the realm of physics than in the realm of chemistry. So, interesting stuff, huh? And these are the times that we find ourselves in. Now, that was a whirlwind breeze through human history with a focus on health and healing. It's a whirlwind breeze through your local area, what's going on here, and what's going on around the world. Hopefully, if anything, you've got a feel for the fact that the diversity is mind-boggling. It's not too diverse that it's utterly chaotic. There is a clear thread that runs through all of the natural medicine traditions that we've spoken about. What is it? Yeah? You might want to think about what those similarities actually are. And I'd also love you, as a parting shot, to look around your local area. I'm looking out at the streets of Melbourne right now on a sunny February afternoon, and I want you to do the same thing, and I want you to think about where the natural medicine is in your area and how is it manifesting, what are they doing, what are they delivering, and how do they get there. And that's the parting thought. See you next time. Take care.